The night I lost my job, the sky felt heavier than usual, like it knew something I didn't. I remember sitting in my car for nearly an hour outside my parents' house, gripping the steering wheel, rehearsing how I would say it. After 8 years at the company, I had been let go in a 10-minute meeting. No warning, no second chance. Just a polite apology and a cardboard box. I thought home would be the one place I could land without breaking completely. I was wrong. When I finally walked in, my mother barely looked up from her phone. My father was watching TV, the volume louder than necessary. I stood there, forcing a calm voice as I told them what happened. The words felt unreal even as I said them. For a moment, there was silence. Then my father sighed loudly, like I had just inconvenienced him. My mother shook her head, her lips tightening into that familiar expression of disappointment I had known my whole life. "So you're unemployed now?" she asked, like it was something shameful, something contagious. I nodded, explaining that I had savings, that I would find something soon. But they weren't listening. My father muted the TV and turned toward me with a look I had never seen before, cold, distant, almost irritated. "You're not staying here," he said flatly. At first, I thought he was joking. "What do you mean?" I asked, a nervous laugh escaping me. My mother stood up then, crossing her arms. "We've supported you enough," she said. "You're an adult. Figure it out." The words hit harder than losing my job. This was my home, the place I thought I could always return to. But suddenly, it felt like I was standing in a stranger's house. I tried to reason with them, reminding them that I had helped with bills, that I had never asked for much. But it only seemed to make things worse. My father's voice rose, accusing me of being irresponsible, of relying on them. The irony burned, but I stayed quiet. There was no winning this argument. Not tonight. Within an hour, my bags were packed. Not by me, but by my mother, who moved through my room with a kind of efficiency that made it clear she had been waiting for a moment like this. She handed me a suitcase like it was nothing, like she wasn't throwing her own child out into the night. My father didn't even look at me as I walked toward the door. The air outside was cold, sharper than before. I stood there for a second, staring at the closed door, half expecting it to open again. It didn't. That was the moment it truly sank in, I had nowhere to go. Or at least, that's what they thought. I got into my car again, but this time, I didn't sit there in silence. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a set of keys. Small, simple, but heavier than they looked. I turned them in my hand, remembering the day I received them. It had been quiet, almost secretive. My grandfather had pressed them into my palm with a knowing smile, telling me not to mention it to anyone. One day, he had said, "You'll understand why." At the time, I didn't think much of it. A beach house was a nice idea, but it felt distant, like something that belonged to another version of my life. I had visited it only a handful of times, always alone, always quietly. My parents never asked, and I never told. It became my escape, my hidden piece of peace in a world that often felt too loud. As I started the engine, a strange calm settled over me. The panic was still there, but beneath it was something steadier. I wasn't as helpless as they believed. I drove through the empty streets, the city lights fading behind me as the road stretched toward the coast. Every mile felt like shedding a layer of something heavy, expectations, disappointment, the constant need to prove myself. By the time I reached the beach house, the sun was beginning to rise. The ocean stretched out endlessly, calm and indifferent. I stepped out of the car, the sound of waves filling the silence. For the first time that night, I took a deep breath that didn't feel like it might break me. Inside, everything was just as I remembered. Clean, quiet, untouched. It didn't feel like a place I had been forced into. It felt like a place I had chosen. I set my suitcase down and walked toward the window, watching the light spill over the water. They thought they had taken everything from me that night. My job, my home, my sense of security. But standing there, I realized something they didn't. They had only removed the illusion that I needed them. And the truth was, they had no idea whose house they had just thrown me into. The first morning at the beach house felt unreal, like I had stepped into someone else's life. The sunlight filtered through the wide glass windows, reflecting off the ocean in soft, shifting patterns. For a moment, I forgot everything, the job, the argument, the way my parents had shut the door without hesitation. But reality has a way of creeping back in, even in the most peaceful places. I made coffee in the quiet kitchen, the kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable but unfamiliar. Back at my parents' house, there was always noise, television, criticism, expectations hanging in the air. Here, there was only the sound of waves and my own thoughts. And for the first time in years, I actually listened to them. I thought about how quickly everything had changed. One day, I was stable, predictable, following a path that seemed safe. The next, I was standing outside with a suitcase, being told I wasn't welcome. It should have broken me. Maybe part of it did. But another part, the part one had ignored for years, felt something else entirely. Freedom. As the days passed, I settled into a routine. I updated my resume, applied for jobs, made calls. But I also did things I had never allowed myself to do before. Long walks on the beach. Sitting for hours just watching the tide. Cooking meals without rushing. It felt strange at first, almost guilty, like I was wasting time. But slowly, that feeling faded. One afternoon, my phone buzzed. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a long time before answering. Her voice was different, less sharp, more controlled. She asked where I was, how I was managing. I could hear something beneath her words, something close to curiosity, maybe even concern. But I also knew her well enough to recognize something else, calculation. "I'm fine," I said simply. I didn't offer details. I didn't explain. There was a pause, longer than usual. "You can't stay with friends forever," she replied. I almost smiled at that. They still thought I was scrambling, dependent, struggling to survive. "I'm not with friends," I said. Another pause. This one heavier. "Then where are you?" she asked. I looked out at the ocean, the horizon stretching endlessly ahead. "Somewhere peaceful," I answered, and left it at that. A few days later, my father called. That alone was unusual. He didn't ask how I was. He went straight to the point, talking about responsibility, about how I needed to fix things. It was the same tone he had used my entire life, the same belief that I was somehow always falling short. But this time, it didn't land the same way. "I am fixing things," I said calmly. "Just not the way you expect." There was silence on the other end, the kind that usually meant he was preparing another lecture. But it never came. Instead, he hung up. Weeks passed, and something unexpected happened. I started to feel stronger. Not in a loud, obvious way, but in a quiet, steady sense of self. I wasn't just surviving, I was rebuilding. On my own terms. Then came the moment everything shifted. It was a Saturday afternoon when a car pulled up outside the beach house. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I stepped outside, I froze. My parents stood there, looking completely out of place against the calm backdrop of the ocean. My mother's eyes scanned the house, confusion written all over her face. My father looked at me, then at the property, as if trying to piece something together. "How are you here?" my mother asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the keys, the same ones my grandfather had given me. I held them up, letting the silence stretch just long enough to settle in. "This house," I said finally, my voice steady, "belongs to me." The words hung in the air, heavier than anything they had said to me that night. My father's expression shifted first, the certainty draining from his face. My mother shook her head slightly, like she was trying to reject what she was hearing. "That's not possible," she said. But it was. And for the first time, they were the ones standing on the outside, unsure, uninvited. They had thrown me out thinking I had nothing. They never imagined I had everything they couldn't take. And as I stood there, with the ocean behind me and the truth finally in the open, I realized something simple but powerful. Losing my job wasn't the moment my life fell apart. It was the moment it finally began.